You loved them well, not perfectly, but genuinely. You showed up, you made space, you stayed through the withdrawals and the silences and the moments where they seemed to be somewhere else entirely, even when they were right there with you. And the better you loved them, the further they went. Not in spite of what you offered, because of it. Why does the avoidance withdrawal intensify as the connection deepens? Why does genuine love, the consistent, patient, real kind, trigger the exact behavior it was trying to prevent? Why does the person who says they want connection consistently destroy it at the moment it becomes most real? Most people believe this is about the avoidant not being ready, about timing, about wounds that need more time to heal. That explanation is kind. It is also dangerously incomplete, and the incompleteness costs people years. By the end of this video, you will understand the deactivation trap in full, what it is, why it activates hardest against the people who love best, and what that means for you, for what you carried, and for every relationship that comes after this one. Subscribe now, because what comes next in this video is the part that most people never get told. Here is what most people believe about the avoidance withdrawal. They believe it's a calibration problem, that the avoidant needs a specific amount of space, and if you could just find the right balance, close enough but not too close, present but not demanding, loving but not needy, the withdrawal would stop. So they try to find that balance. They adjust, they monitor themselves carefully, they become experts in reading the avoidance signals and modulating their own behavior accordingly. And the withdrawal continues, because the calibration belief fundamentally misunderstands what the deactivation system is responding to. It is not responding to too much closeness. It is responding to real closeness. Here is the precise mechanism. And it comes from some of the most well-documented research in attachment psychology. The avoidance nervous system learned early and through repetition that emotional dependence is dangerous, that needing someone produces vulnerability, that the person who is supposed to show up at your most open moment is also the person most likely to not be there, or to be there in a way that makes it worse. The child's system adapted with a specific strategy: suppress attachment needs before they become visible, because visible need leads to shame, abandonment, or being overwhelmed. That suppression became the deactivation system, and the deactivation system has one specific trigger that overrides everything else. Not conflict, not disagreement, not even distance requests. The trigger is felt safety. Here's the paradox that most people never get explained to them. The deactivation system fires hardest when the avoidant feels most safe with you, when the connection is most genuine, when the warmth is most real, because genuine safety is the exact condition that would allow suppressed attachment needs to surface. And the system was built to prevent that from ever happening. Your love was not the wrong thing. It was the right thing happening to a system that was built to prevent right things from being felt. The deactivation trap is not that the avoidant doesn't feel safe with you, it's that they feel safe enough to feel terrified. There are 5 phases that describe how the deactivation trap operates, from the first sign to the full collapse of the connection. The first is the approach phase. In the beginning of any significant connection, the avoidance deactivation system is managing what it always manages, the threat of closeness. But at this stage, the connection is not yet deep enough to be genuinely threatening. Externally, the avoidant is present, engaged, sometimes intensely so. The early period of connection with an avoidant can feel like the most alive and attentive relationship you've ever been in. Internally, the avoidant is managing an experience they rarely allow themselves, the genuine pleasure of connection before the threat level rises, before the stakes are real. They are close, they are warm, and the system hasn't fully registered yet that this is the kind of connection it will eventually need to manage. The second phase is the depth detection phase. Something shifts. The connection deepens past the point where it was still safely surface level. Genuine emotional intimacy is developing. The avoidant is beginning to be known, and to know in a way that is qualitatively different from what came before. Externally, the first small withdrawals appear. Nothing dramatic yet. Slightly shorter responses. A reschedule where one wasn't needed before. A moment of unavailability that feels slightly different from ordinary busyness. Internally, the deactivation system has registered the depth and begun running its standard protocol. The protocol works by diminishing the felt importance of the connection, producing thoughts that focus on flaws, incompatibilities, reasons this isn't quite right, not lies exactly, but a specifically curated selection of doubts that the system generates to create psychological distance. The avoidant does not experience this as their system running a program. They experience it as, I'm not sure about this. Maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe I need space. Those thoughts feel authentic. They are generated by the deactivation system to feel authentic. That is precisely what makes them so difficult for the avoidant to question. The third phase is the love threat phase. This is the phase that is at the center of everything this video is explaining. The avoidant now knows, at a level below conscious thought, that what exists between you is real, not potential, not surface, real. And real is the most threatening thing their system can encounter. Externally, the withdrawal intensifies. The pattern that looked like occasional unavailability is now more consistent. The warmth arrives in smaller doses. The moments of genuine closeness are followed more quickly by emotional retreat. Internally, the deactivation system is running at full capacity. The threat calculation has shifted from "this could become threatening" to "this is threatening." And a threatened deactivation system deploys everything available: exaggerated focus on the other person's flaws, idealization of independence, manufactured reasons why this specific connection cannot work, nostalgia for periods of greater aloneness. This is the phase where the avoidant begins to experience what researchers describe as approach avoidance conflict, the simultaneous desire for and terror of the very thing in front of them. They want you, genuinely. The wanting is real. And the wanting is exactly what the system is designed to suppress. The fourth phase is the deactivation execution phase. The system has reached a decision point, and it executes what it always executes. Externally, the relationship reaches its crisis. The withdrawal becomes unmistakable. Communication drops. The texture of the connection, which used to carry warmth and genuine engagement, now carries distance that feels structural rather than situational. Internally, the avoidant has achieved what the system was designed to achieve. The threat of deep connection has been neutralized. The felt safety that was triggering the terror is gone. The system exhales. But something different happens in this phase compared to previous cycles, because this connection was deeper than previous ones. The material that was suppressed, the genuine feeling, the real attachment, was more substantial. And the system, having executed its protocol, finds that the suppression is not as complete as it usually is. The depth of what was real leaves traces the deactivation cannot fully contain. The fifth phase is the aftermath recognition phase. Time passes. The avoidant is in their familiar independent baseline, and the specific quality of what was real, the particular depth of what you offered, the specific texture of being genuinely loved in the way that you loved, surfaces in comparison to everything else, not as a realization that arrives all at once, as an accumulation. A slow, undeniable building of evidence that what the system destroyed was not an ordinary connection, that it was the kind of connection the system was specifically built to prevent, and specifically built to destroy. The aftermath recognition phase is where the avoidant begins to live inside the consequence of the deactivation trap. Not the consequence of your absence, the consequence of their system's execution against the one thing it was most afraid of. The love that triggered the hardest deactivation was not the problem. It was the answer the system wouldn't let them have. Let me stop here for a moment, right in the middle of this, because I want to know something. How long did you spend trying to find the right balance? Adjusting yourself? Monitoring your own love to make it less threatening? Trying to figure out how to be close enough without triggering the withdrawal? Drop a number in the comments, months, years, whatever it was. Because I think when you see other people's numbers, something important happens. You realize you weren't doing anything wrong. You were doing everything right in a dynamic designed to make right feel like wrong. Most people, when they understand the deactivation trap, experience a specific and painful clarity. They realize they spent significant time trying to solve a problem that was not theirs to solve, adjusting their love to make it safer, making themselves smaller, quieter, less present, in the hope that the deactivation wouldn't fire if the connection stayed below the threat threshold. And here is the brutal truth of that approach. It was never going to work, not because you weren't doing it right, because the deactivation system doesn't fire against too much love. It fires against real love, and making your love smaller would have made it less real. And a less real connection is one the avoidant doesn't pursue, because it no longer contains what activated the system in the first place. You were in an impossible position. The very thing that made you worth the avoidance fear was the thing you were trying to suppress to stop triggering it. Contrast that with the grounded understanding. You stop adjusting your love to fit the deactivation system's tolerance levels, not because you give up on the avoidant, but because you understand with precision that a love that has been made smaller to avoid triggering withdrawal is no longer the love you're capable of. And the love you're capable of deserves to go somewhere. It can be fully received. That is not giving up. That is accurate assessment. And accurate assessment is the beginning of every good decision you'll make from here. 5 principles govern how you move forward with this understanding intact. The first is called deactivation depersonalization. The withdrawal was not about your inadequacy. It was about the depth of the connection activating a system that was built before you arrived. Deactivation depersonalization is the practice of consciously separating what happened, the system's execution, from what it meant about you. Every time the thought arrives that you were too much or not enough, or that someone more suited would have been loved without the withdrawal, you return to the mechanism. You depersonalize. The system ran. You were not the failure of the system. You were the evidence that the system was needed. The second principle is called love quality preservation. Somewhere in this dynamic, you learn to make your love smaller, more careful, more monitored. Love quality preservation is the active practice of reclaiming the full, generous, unmonitored quality of love you're capable of, and holding it as an asset rather than a liability. The love that triggered the avoidance deactivation was not a flaw, it was your depth. It goes with you, intact, into every connection that comes after this one. The third is called system recognition in real time. The deactivation trap is not unique to one person. It is a pattern with a signature. And now that you understand the signature, the way warmth is followed by withdrawal, the way deepening connection produces manufactured doubt, the way the system fires hardest at the moment of greatest safety, you will recognize it earlier in future relationships, not to avoid avoidance, but to read clearly what you're seeing when you see it, rather than adjusting yourself around a pattern you haven't named. The fourth principle is called grief precision. The grief you feel from this dynamic is not only about losing this person. It contains a more specific grief, the grief of having loved fully in a dynamic that couldn't receive it. Those are different losses with different processing requirements. Grief precision means you identify each component accurately: the loss of the person, the loss of the version of yourself you were trying to manage, the loss of what this relationship could have been if the architecture had been different. Each component deserves specific acknowledgement before it can be genuinely released. The fifth is called readiness recalibration. This experience has given you the clearest possible picture of what you require from a relationship, not in the abstract, in the specific. You require someone whose attachment system can hold the full weight of your love without the deactivation protocol running against it. You require someone who moves toward genuine connection as connection deepens rather than away from it. Readiness recalibration means you carry this specificity forward, not as a checklist, but as a felt understanding of what genuine receiving looks like, so you recognize it when it's present and recognize its absence equally quickly. Here is the realization this video has been building toward from its first line. The avoidant pushed away the person who loved them most, not in spite of the love, because of it. Not because the love was wrong, because the system read it as the most dangerous thing it had ever encountered. That is not your failure. That is the most precise possible confirmation of your depth. You don't diminish the love you gave because it wasn't received at its full weight. You carry it forward, unchanged, undiminished, towards someone whose system doesn't require them to run from exactly what they've been looking for. You don't make yourself smaller to fit inside someone else's fear. You find the person whose growth has made them large enough to hold what you've always been capable of giving. You don't spend the rest of your life managing your own love. You spend it finding the context where managing it would never occur to you. Zoom all the way out. The deactivation trap is not a personal failing of the avoidant. It is the predictable output of an attachment system that learned survival through emotional suppression and was never given the conditions, the safety, or the support to learn differently. Self-worth is not confirmed by being loved well by someone who couldn't. It is confirmed by how fully you loved, and by your decision, now that you understand the mechanism, to direct that love somewhere it can actually land. Emotional intelligence is not the ability to outsmart the deactivation system. It is the ability to see it clearly in them, in the dynamic, in your own responses to it, and make decisions based on what you see rather than on what you hoped. Personal power is not making an avoidant capable of receiving your love. It is knowing that your love was never the problem, and being done with any context that requires you to pretend it was. The deactivation trap caught them. You walked out of it. The question now is not what happens to them. The question is what you build with everything you just learned. If this video named something you've been carrying, something you've tried to explain to people around you who didn't quite get it, leave it in the comments. Put it in one sentence. What did this finally explain for you? Your answer is what this community is made of. And if you want to understand whether an avoidant can actually break out of the deactivation pattern, what real healing looks like from the inside, whether it's possible and what it requires, that's exactly where the next video goes. It's already waiting for you. Go watch it now.